"Get your old hands off that stool," the biker growled, punching the 85-year-old man squarely in the face. Blood trickled down the elderly man's cheek, but he struggled to stay standing. The entire bar fell silent. No one intervened. The old man quietly opened his phone, dialed a single number, then sat back down. 30 minutes later, engines roared outside. A special forces unit pulled up in front of the bar. Their commander walked in, eyes blazing. "Where is the man who laid a hand on my father? Type honor if you believe some lines should never be crossed." William Bill Harlow was an 85-year-old retired Marine Corps first sergeant. His weathered hands had seen combat in Korea and Panama, his quiet eyes carrying memories few could comprehend. Now living alone after his wife's passing, Bill maintained a simple Saturday ritual, visiting the bar he once owned to help clean tables, a habit that connected him to happier days. The worn cloth in his pocket was as much a part of him as the faded USMC tattoo on his forearm. The bar had changed hands years ago, but the new owners always welcomed him, until that day. A group of unfamiliar bikers rumbled into the establishment, loud and confrontational from the moment they entered. Their leather vests bore patches claiming territory rather than earning respect. Bill noticed spilled beer pooling near their table. Without thinking, he reached with his cleaning cloth, the same way he had for decades. The largest biker's voice cut through the bar noise. "This table's mine! Can't you see you're too old for this?" Before anyone could react, the biker's fist connected with Bill's cheek. The sound, dull and sickening, silenced the room. Blood trickled down Bill's face as he stumbled backward, colliding with bar stools. Not a single patron stood to help him. The bartender looked away, pretending to wipe glasses. The manager disappeared into the back office. Bill steadied himself against the wall, his military discipline evident even now. He didn't retaliate or raise his voice. Instead, he calmly reached for his phone and dialed the one number he knew by heart. Colonel Richard Harlow, his son and current commander of the 27th Special Operations Brigade. The phone rang just once before Richard answered. "Dad, what's wrong?" Bill's voice remained steady despite the blood now dripping onto his shirt. "Son, there's been a situation at O'Malley's. Nothing serious." But Richard knew his father never called during deployment exercises unless absolutely necessary. The tremor in Bill's usually unwavering voice told him everything he needed to know. "I'll be there soon. Stay put." Bill ended the call and pocketed his phone. The biker, emboldened by his first unchallenged assault, loomed closer, enjoying the spectacle of the old man's humiliation. "Who'd you call, Grandpa? The retirement home?" Bill said nothing, simply pressing his handkerchief against his bleeding cheek. His silence wasn't submission. It was the calm calculation of a man who'd faced far worse than bar bullies. He didn't need to fight this battle himself. For the first time in decades, he allowed himself to call for reinforcements. The biker, unsatisfied with Bill's composure, stepped forward again, fist clenched for another strike. The bar manager finally approached, but instead of confronting the aggressor, he gently took Bill's arm. "Mr. Harlow, maybe you should leave to avoid further trouble." Bill looked at the manager, a young man he'd once hired as a dishwasher, with quiet disappointment. Without argument, he walked outside, settling on a wooden bench. Blood still staining his cheek, phone and cleaning cloth still in hand. He made one more call, to his old Marine unit, requesting confirmation that security cameras had captured the incident. The young duty officer recognized his name immediately. "First Sergeant Harlow." "Sir, we'll retrieve that footage right away." At Fort Bragg, Colonel Richard Harlow was reviewing operation plans when an urgent message flashed on his phone. "Code Gray, father assaulted." Richard stood immediately, years of combat decision-making condensing into a single moment. "Prepare the convoy," he commanded. "This is not a drill." His executive officer raised an eyebrow. "Sir, is this an official operation?" "No," Richard replied. "This is family business. But make no mistake, it's just as important as any mission we've ever undertaken." Within minutes, 3 armored vehicles were prepped. Richard had considered calling local police, but recognized a deeper principle at stake. This wasn't about revenge, it was about honor, something that couldn't be delegated to a police report. Outside the bar, Bill sat patiently. His years in the service had taught him that some battles require patience, not immediate reaction. The Marines had trained him to assess, plan, and execute, not simply respond to provocation. Inside, the bikers continued drinking, laughing about the old man who ran away. The regular patrons remained silent, eyes down, pretending the incident hadn't happened. Their collective shame hung in the air, thicker than the cigarette smoke. One young server whispered to another, "Shouldn't someone help him? And get involved with those bikers?" "Not worth it," came the reply. This silent complicity, the willingness to witness injustice without action, was precisely what Bill had once fought against. Not on foreign battlefields, but in the daily choices that define character. When he called his son, it wasn't weakness. It was a recognition that some wrongs must be addressed, not ignored. If a man who once held this country steady throughout his life can be struck down while no one speaks up, then the problem lies in our silence. Type honor if you refuse to accept this. 30 minutes after Bill's call, 3 armored vehicles and a flag-bearing Humvee pulled up outside the bar. The convoy arrival alone caused conversations inside to fade into stunned silence. Colonel Richard Harlow stepped out, followed by 8 Special Forces operators. They wore no visible weapons. Their presence and purpose were authority enough. Richard entered the bar, his voice cutting through the silence. "Who struck First Sergeant William Harlow?" No one answered. The bikers exchanged nervous glances, bravado evaporating in the face of actual military discipline. A soldier projected video footage onto the wall, crystal-clear security camera images showing the unprovoked assault on Bill. Richard addressed the bar manager. "The man you sent outside built this establishment with his own hands. He's my father." Richard's voice remained controlled, professional, the same tone he used commanding missions. But those who knew him recognized the fury beneath his composure. The biker who had thrown the punch stammered, I didn't know who he was." Richard stepped closer, his voice dropping even lower. "When you strike someone because you perceive weakness, you don't need to know who they are. You've already revealed who you are." The entire bar held its breath as Richard continued. "That man you struck has a Medal of Valor. He pulled 14 wounded Marines to safety under heavy fire in Korea. He's attended the funeral of every man who ever served under his command. You didn't just hit an old man. You struck a living embodiment of sacrifice." Richard turned to his team. "Secure the premises." With military precision, they positioned themselves at key points throughout the bar. One operator gently assisted the manager to make a formal police report. Another team retrieved the security footage. Local police arrived shortly after, taking the biker into custody for assault. Outside, Richard approached his father, who still sat patiently on the bench. The son, now a decorated commander himself, stood at attention and saluted before embracing Bill. The entire Special Forces team lined up, each saluting the elderly veteran with the respect reserved for the highest officers. Bill nodded acknowledgement, his posture straightening despite his years. Muscle memory from decades of service responding to the familiar gesture. Local residents had gathered, witnessing the unusual scene. Children pointed at the military vehicles. Adults whispered explanations. An important lesson unfolded before them, about consequences, respect, and the invisible bonds between those who serve. Later that evening, after the police had finished their report and the bar had closed early, Richard sat with his father at their family home. "You could have handled him yourself," Richard said. "I've seen you take down men twice your size during training." Bill smiled faintly. "I didn't call you because I couldn't defend myself. I called because someone needed to defend what's right." "I'm sorry I didn't get there sooner," Richard replied. Bill shook his head. "Son, there are 2 kinds of responses in this world, those that come too late and those that come exactly when needed." 1 week later, a new sign hung in the bar, "Built by a warrior, protected by his legacy." Bill still visited on Saturdays, still wiped down tables, but now patrons stood respectfully when he entered. A curious young boy approached him. "Sir, did you really fight in a war?" Bill smiled gently. "Yes, but what makes me proudest is having a son who knows right from wrong." Colonel Richard visited whenever deployment allowed. During one such visit, he said, "Dad, I'm sorry I arrived 30 minutes late that day." Bill's weathered face brightened. "No, You arrived exactly when honor needed to be restored. The incident sparked change beyond the bar. Local schools invited veterans to speak. The community established a program connecting younger veterans with their elders. Even some of the bikers returned, this time with respect, asking to hear Bill's stories. The bar became a living testament to something vital. Connections between generations of service create an unbreakable chain of accountability. No 85-year-old should have to defend himself, but when someone who once defended this nation is struck, they deserve to stand unharmed. If you believe honor transcends age and respect must be passed down through generations, subscribe to TT Silent Valor.